So this is probably the silhouette that you're most familiar with. It's probably what you think of when you think of a Roman Legionary, which is a soldier of the Roman Empire. Unfortunately, it is also my least favorite armor to wear of all time. This armor is called Lorica segmentata. Basically means segmented armor. And as you can see, it's basically made of overlapping plates held together by leather straps on the inside and the outside. It has the benefit of offering amazing protection, but there are some downfalls. First, it's actually fairly complicated to make, as you can guess just by looking at the amount of brass fittings and leather strappings, just the pieces involved. Second, they actually never really perfected it. The brass pieces actually have chemical reactions with the plating, and it causes corrosion. The leather strappings get eaten away, and they never actually really fixed that. So Lorica segmentata is this great idea for armor. It was worn for a nice little stretch of the Roman Empire, but they never perfected it, and it has its flaws. The helmet I'm wearing looks very similar to the one I would have worn in Republican times. It's known as a Gallic helm. You can see the cheek pieces have widened. They've added this visor to protect from blows from above, and the neck actually flares out quite a bit to offer protection from above as well as behind. So the helmet has actually improved significantly since the days of the Roman Republic. So here's an excellent look at the shield, the scutum, for the Roman Empire, which is again probably the shield that you're most familiar with. I show it to you from behind so you can see that it's really curved. Basically, it's a cylinder cut in half, so you could essentially have protection wrapping around you as a Roman soldier. It's also basically neck to knees at the very least. Very simple wooden shield, but quite effective. So what I'm holding here is a Roman spear, a Roman pilum. And it's hard to actually get it all in one shot, but it's actually a brilliant piece of warfare engineering. The idea behind a pilum is you've got a triangular point that's kind of a softer iron. And then that point is married to a wooden shaft, sometimes with a weight like this ball that I have right here. The idea is these are meant to be thrown, and if they lodge in an opponent's shield, that soft iron head is going to flatten out in the shield and essentially make the shield unwieldable because you will have this giant spear sticking out from it. The idea behind the wooden haft is, as you see, it's secured by bolts. Well, the Roman quartermaster can go around after the battle, loosen the bolts, and we could save the wooden haft, attach another head to it, and you're ready to keep fighting. The pilum is just one of those elements of Roman warfare where they really kind of perfected every element. Meant to be thrown and deprived you of your protection, if not your life. I've mentioned that this armor is not my favorite. And one of the reasons it's not my favorite is because it hurts. It seems like all the edges pinch and weigh you down, but mostly pinch. As well as the lacings have a way of reminding you just how out of shape you are. This is not something that was foreign to Roman soldiers. They actually wore a special scarf around their necks to basically prevent both their helmets, but most specifically their armor, from essentially pinching into their necks. And you can see I'm wearing it here. I was wearing it during Republican times earlier, but here's where I'm really feeling it, because without it, this would hurt. The edges of this armor would dig into my skin and it would hurt. One of the things students always ask me about when we look at Roman armor and Roman uniforms is this belt of medallions. The thing is, we don't know what it was for. We don't know what purpose it had. Was it purely decorative? Did it signify rank? Were they medals of some kind? Were they protection? Were they offering protection? We actually don't know. No one writes about it and talks about what it actually was for. All we know is that Roman soldiers wore these very odd-looking belts with these leather straps that draped down and were often festooned and adorned with bits of brass. Why? We just don't know. So one of the few things that a Roman soldier didn't carry on that T-shaped carrying pole was kind of a leather satchel where you could carry some of your marching food. Roman soldier was expected to carry 2 to 3 days worth of food on the march. Roman soldiers would be tented in groups of 8, and they would essentially split up the chores of the day, of the camp. The cooking chores, the building chores, just whatever you have. That group of 8, you know, maybe I'm carrying the pot and someone else is carrying the frying pan. Maybe one person's carrying the grain. So that group of 8 would bunk together in a leather tent. They would cook together. They would essentially be given by the Roman quartermaster just handfuls of grain and raw meat, and basically left to themselves how they wanted to carry it. Of course, in any army, protein's important. There is kind of a myth that Romans kind of subsisted on kind of a grain diet only, and that is just a myth. They were quite fond of things like pork. So it's entirely possible that during the morning they go ahead and cook up a bit of bacon and they're carrying it on the march to eat on breaks like the one I'm having now. The Roman quartermasters doled out grain because grain was more resistant to spoilage than a finished form of bread or cracker or anything like that. But, you know, it is entirely possible that the group of 8 would decide to go ahead and cook up a lot of that grain early on. And the easiest way to do that would be the ever-present piece of hardtack. Hardtack's fascinating. It's the simplest thing. Flour, water, bake, bake again. Hard as a rock, but really resistant to spoilage. You would think, as we explore these different cultures over centuries, that the food would be very different, and it turns out it's not. Because I always know I can look forward to hardtack. I just know, because of its properties. Of course, hardtack's just not very appetizing. And if you're not worried about speed or portability, then your group of 8 might do something like a flatbread and cook some of that up, which is a little bit more appetizing, lasts a nice amount of time, and doesn't break your teeth like hardtack. Here's the fun thing about salt. Salt was precious. Not only does it impart that familiar taste, but you can use it to essentially keep food from spoiling. Salt was so precious that soldiers would get their pay and they would spend it on salt to such an extent that today, when we use the word salary, that's actually from the Latin salarium, which is from another Latin term, salarius, salt, because it was so common for soldiers to spend their salary on salt. That essentially, that's the term we use from now on. So when you get a monthly salary, you're essentially going, this is my monthly salt allowance, is basically the term you're using. Salt. Funny, I often remark on the sound of history, and certainly this march has had that sound from the various rattling of swords and spears, pots, pans, bits of leather and brass fittings. It definitely has this unique sound. That is true. So, as I finish up my hike today, certainly I've been made aware of how out of shape I am, but also just an appreciation for the mules of the Roman army. And when you read of them in the primary sources, you read of them marching from one place to another and then fighting a battle, building forts. I just have a better appreciation now of just the weight of that. And now I get to set that weight down. This is Heath, the History Guy, and I'll see you on our next hike.